All right, what's up, everybody?
What's up, y'all? Oh, damn, John.
This is a very special Tuesday. 2 for Tuesday.
2 for 2.
We got 2 interviews today.
It's on your, you got a picture thing there. What's up, y'all? We got some more for you.
Oh,
so, we're live on Just Cause right now on Facebook, and we just finished up with Regina English. She did a great interview and spoke her piece and stated her case for running for city council this upcoming cycle. And yeah, it was great, man. So John and I, they promised Lee to come on up here. And we finally got him. We got him, man. We got him. So, you know, we started out the last one with just, you know, thanking everyone that's come so far. So far, you know, Yolanda Avila's come through, Richard Storman's come through, and now we got Promise Lee. So, you know, it feels like Just Cause is kind of being recognized as something that the folks are listening to and paying attention to. And we really appreciate you doing this for us, Pastor. So thank you so much for being here, man.
I actually think it was his idea, right? To come on our show, which is
okay.
Hey, I'll come on your show.
Yeah, that was great, man.
What's your now? All right.
Thank you. Yeah. So for people that don't know you, Pastor, who is Promise Lee in Colorado Springs? Who is Pastor Lee? Because you know, when people say Promise, it kind of rings bells. You know, it moves and shapes things a little bit differently. And how did it come about? How did you come about here?
That's a good question. That's probably the most interesting question I've been asked.
Huh.
I'm just a regular old guy who grew up in the hood.
Okay.
Went to prison at 15 for a case, hanging around with the wrong crowd, drug deal gone bad. And back in those days, in the 70s, I was tried as an adult, and even though I was 15 years old, and was sent to grown man prison. So inside the walls, I don't know what they call it now, maybe territorial, but back then it was called max, full max, maximum security. So, you know, I was just a bad guy running around in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods. But this was really a drug deal that went wrong. I was the youngest out of the group. And got out. A lot of people think that I found God in prison. I didn't. I found God after getting out of prison. So I boxed in prison, got out, came back here. They wouldn't let me parole back to Colorado Springs because of the severity of my case. So I paroled to Texas, and my dad was here, and I came back here because he was sick, even though I was not supposed to travel back here. But family comes first. Right? So I came back here, ended up getting my parole transferred here, and I just stayed here. But upon coming back later on, I saw that some of the same conditions that existed when I was a kid were still in existence. Case in point, Prospect Lake, some of the same playground equipment that was dilapidated, tore down, under par was still there. Tore up basketball rims, water fountain on that side of the lake not working, the swing sets tied up with rope from people's yards, no grass, just an atrocity. However, on the east side of the lake, where other people frequented, it was brand new equipment, plastic, fiberglass, everything was new and shiny. The other thing I discovered is that a lot of the street lights in the neighborhood were out, broken windows. When the snow came, our streets didn't get paved, alleys had holes in the alleys. So there was really taxation without equal representation. And a lady asked me, a lady who knew me when I was a kid, she said, "You have to tear up this neighborhood before you left. What you going to do to fix it?" And that said something, spoke inside of me. And so I just began to go through the neighborhood, house by house, block by block, assessing the needs, assessing the desires and the concerns of residents. And then we just started working. We went to go fixing things, running the crack houses out. Some of those which I was a part of prior to getting rid of the whole houses, don't understand that vernacular. That's a prostitute house.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's what really started my activism.
What year was that?
That was in the 80s, I think, in 82 or something like that.
Wow. And it's been ever since then. You've been going nonstop since then.
Yeah, I just feel like I owe this community. And after getting saved, I just feel like God saved me to be a voice for the voiceless. And so that's it.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm humbled to have that platform. I don't take it lightly, and I don't take it arrogantly. A lot of people think that it's they see the out frontness of a person, and they think it's glitter and luxury and stuff like that. But it's a tough and humbling position to be in. Anybody who desires to be an activist or a community organizer, there are many prices to pay for that.
Indeed. Yes, sir. Well, I for one, we got a whole list of questions. I'll just stop and I'll thank you. I was, I'm sure people give you gratitude all the time. But I'm 40 years old. I was born in 1980. So if you started in 82, you've been doing this my whole life. And to this day right now, you'll text my phone and keep me in the loop and make sure that I'm a part of what I want to be a part of in the community. And that speaks volumes to you as a man. And it really gives me goosebumps to know that we got somebody like that in our community. Yeah, man. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate all, but that's a lot of work and a lot of years, and it takes something out of you, I know. So I really appreciate all the dedication that you have for the Southside.
Before you get into questions for me, let me just say to our listening audience and to you all, and this is real, I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. I'm old, tired.
Yeah.
Don't have the energy that I had, but I really applaud the work you guys are doing. And anything that I can do to support your cause, just cause, I'm there.
Thank you so much.
That honestly means so much. And to be perfectly honest, though, I always feel like we're supported from you, which feels good. It's good to know that like somebody has your back or whatever. Like it's nice to know that there's somebody who you can call on too. Because I feel like anytime we need stuff, even just here in the Chinook Center, we can call on you and you've always been supportive. Yeah, we definitely appreciate that. And I understand because we're like mid-range now, we have other folks coming up younger than us that we're trying to
get them up there. So yeah, we really appreciate it. And again, I hope that you know that it's in good hands. We're taking your lead, and the things that you do and the things that you say is exactly what I want to be and become in this city. So yeah, man, your life's work has been fantastic. We're gonna show and prove sure as we keep going, and we're gonna talk about the city council election that's coming up. And I think that it feels like we're in the next 2 or 3 years we're coming up on a time period that's going to be kind of, it can either be very detrimental or a defining moment for the Southside either way it goes. We got 6 seats coming up that are being ran for, some that are being defended, and we had I think we just said on the show that we have Richard Storman and Yolanda Vila come on. Regina English is running; she come on, and we got a few other invitations to the people that are going for this thing. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on the city council election, and how should this thing play out with the community, and how should we be looking at this thing as it goes forward, and maybe not just for District 4, but as the whole picture. How does it play along for our side of the city?
Yeah, I can speak to the bigger picture, but I think that the important 2 seats are Richard's seat and Yolanda's seat, and that's because they directly affect our neighborhood. And so me, as far as a candidate, a few things I look at. I don't look at color, I look at character. That's one. Secondly, I want to make sure that I have access to a candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So if I pick up the phone and call and there's an issue, I want you to answer my call. The first time you don't, then you're no longer in good graces.
Right.
I want you to do what you say you're going to do. So my endorsement, I don't know if you're asking me that question, but my endorsement, if Richard wouldn't have been running, I would have ran for his seat. But he's running. I think he'll do a good job there. I've known Richard for a couple of decades, and even way back in the times of Katrina, that disaster, the city spent a bunch of money trying to help in the way that they thought they could help. I called Richard. I took a person from my church. He funded that project. We went down there and brought back over 200 families. Those folks didn't even know that black people lived in Colorado Springs. They didn't want to come here. So just with that, just with those resources, we did, and you know how the community work is. Some people can do more with a dime than organizations can do with $10.
Right.
And so Richard joined in on that, the All-American City Award, which Hillside was the first neighborhood association to ever win that award. It's typically given to state, federal agencies, things like that, government agencies, etc. Richard was a part of that. And then there's just a long list. The wastewater company there in Hillside, the smell was horrendous. I mean, you could smell it all the way on the other side across the lake. So Richard's the kind of guy that said, Richard, I need you to come down here and walk with me. And he'd walk and he'd see it firsthand, and then he'd go and address it. So Richard is my pick for that seat. And by the way, because of some boundary changes, Richard now has some of John Adams' area.
Oh, okay. That's what it's confused about where that switch happened at.
Yeah, we
Okay.
knew there was something
Yeah.
like within this little
Right.
area between Kayla and Hillside.
Yeah, so you all should also hold him accountable. There's a lot to be done here. In fact, they're creating a master plan, and that's typically a 20-year plan of how the neighborhood is going to look. So that talks about traffic, it talks about highways, bridges, it talks about housing, it talks about businesses, etc. So people from the community should be involved in that process.
Okay.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a do to or a do for, it should be a do with.
Right.
And they shouldn't be able to do anything unless, particularly you guys are involved in that process, and other people in the neighborhood. Secondly, I know that Regina's running. I've not had a conversation with Regina about her seat. She hasn't asked me to endorse her. She hasn't asked me anything regarding the seat. I think she's a wonderful person from what I know. But my endorsement is for Yolanda. And here's the reason. Yolanda also has proven that she is an asset to this community. She's done some things. She's issued proclamations. She's fought on council, particularly in the Devon Bailey thing. She was the loud voice there. She grew up in the neighborhood. The other thing about Yolanda is that same thing, if I call her, I have complete access.
Yeah.
And we may not agree all the time, and I'm not wanting somebody to agree with me all the time, but at least if I call you and say, come out and see, come out and listen, come out and look, then at least do that. So she's done that, and she asked me for endorsement. I think the other thing, in a council seat, there's a learning curve. So for somebody that's new to come in there to run for council, it's a huge learning curve. And you've got to have an agenda. And so maybe what people who are wanting to run next time should do is to be mentored or shadow some of the people who are in there now. Because it's a tough job. It's a tough job.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on any of the other council seats? I mean, because it is the whole council, right? When you go up,
Yeah, 6 seats.
Yeah.
it's the council, and it is hard to even have a sense that they're individuals sometimes when you're out there.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to. I haven't endorsed any other candidates yet, so I prefer just to be silent.
Okay.
And I'm waiting on them to reach out.
Right.
So
right.
if you're listening, you should reach out.
Come out, talk to me. We're reaching too. So that's the thing that a lot of times I get this happening to me. I feel like my perspective is representative of the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? And like, if you don't know who the Chinook Center is or who Sean Walls is, then like, are you really an activist out here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's not the case. So I think that making sure that we know that those people know that we're looking for them is important. We're sending emails and stuff, so if you're watching and listening, you know. I don't know how to pronounce it. Nancy Hingeman, and Geislinger. We sent him.
We're still
Geislinger. We
working
sent him about
on
6 emails, guy. We need you to come on with it. So we want you to come here and engage with the community and talk about these things in particular because they're important to us. And the city looks different than it did even 4 years ago. I was just telling Regina that when Yolanda ran, the community, we didn't have this. We weren't galvanized the way we are now. We didn't have the foundation of what we do here now, where we can organize and go and mobilize and move on something. So I feel as though the city council races shouldn't look the same way that they've looked before with the politics and this person, that person getting along or whatever. It should be my community is saying this, and we're going to come and do this together. You know what I'm saying? And just how you said, how did you put it? Not to you or not to you or for you, but with you. So, I think that's a big thing for all of these people that are running this year to pay attention to because it's not going to be the way that it has been.
And just the demographics of the city are changing. I was talking to Sean Attergy about this, that, New York Times just released their, fine point examination of the election, and I noticed, most of, inner city, central city, Colorado Springs, including basically all of District 4, went for Biden. 10 years ago, that would not have been the case. The demographics are just shifting. The politics of the city are just shifting. And people need to actually be responding to that. I have to admit, when I was talking to Richard Scorman, I was getting a little frustrated with this, well, you got to look at the city we live in. And I'm but the city's actually changing. And I know, I remember 1992. I remember the bad old days, when it was the hate state coming straight out of Colorado Springs, But the fact of the matter is that it really is changing, and more people are getting much more engaged in politics. This summer, so many people were out protesting at City Hall, contacting their city council members. So I think city leaders need to realize that that things have sort of changed.
Yeah, that's to the community.
I think one of the other things too that we should be aware of is that people in position that supposedly represent us or elected to represent us may not address the issues like we would or like we want them to. So we have to have a certain amount of grace there also. Are we concerned about how they address the issues, or are we concerned about getting the issue addressed? And sometimes how somebody else addresses the issue, if it looks different from the way we would, we get caught up and distracted in that noise, opposed to the main objective is getting the issue addressed.
Yeah.
So it requires some patience on our part. We're not going to agree on everything. Your way of doing something or addressing something may be a little bit different than my way. But if the objective is to get the thing changed or get the issue addressed, then let's focus on that.
Right.
I think that's good.
So I understand the frustration. I understand the frustration,
Yeah, and it's not just, it's whatever. Richard Scorman is the city councilor that I probably end up interacting with my representative. With the most, he usually emails me back, or I'll just walk up to him and talk to him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that. It was just a little bit of that frustration. But I have to say, one thing I always respect about you is that you do seem to respect the diversity of tactics. Where a lot of people are I disagree with you on tactics, therefore I cannot work with you.
Don't even talk to me.
Which is, you're right. We have the same goal, but we just have different tactics.
Then we're on the same team. Yeah, so Pastor, you mentioned that if Richard wouldn't have ran, then you would have run for his seat. Is that the only reason why you didn't run? Is that he ran, or is it?
Yeah, I think he'll do a good job there.
Okay.
And I would have ran just to make sure that we kept the seat, that it was occupied and that we had proper representation.
Okay.
But that's a tough job. Meetings, 35, 40 hours a week. The pay isn't great.
Yeah.
Not that I need the money, but I think that, and hopefully that's something that we're working on this time around,
Right.
so that people can run,
Yeah.
so it doesn't continue to look like it looks.
Right.
But no, Richard will do a good job, and I know my call in life, my next call is political. I've known that for 20-some years, and I'm glad that because of that seat. I want a platform where I can really have a strong voice, a large platform, and that I can really generate change.
So that was one of our down there. A lot of when we talk about 2023 being a kind of a paradigm shift for the South Side, we talk about the mayoral seat, getting rid of Southers and putting.
See, I like how direct you are.
Getting them out there and put promise in the seat. There are people want to put promise in the seat, and when we think about, I've talked to you about this before, and I understand. But what I want to know is, if it's not that, then what is that seat that looks like? You don't know yet?
Yeah, so I'm a man of faith.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a time and season for everything.
Yeah.
And I want to be where God calls me to be. And so even with Richard's seat, there was a battle going on with me inside, because I wanted to make sure that we occupied that seat. When I say we, I mean the voice of the community. Right. But I really didn't feel the call to that seat. Mm-hmm. So when I spoke with you, I said I'm considering it. Yeah, right. And it was for the reason to make sure that we have proper representation. But I never felt God's call to the seat. Now, had I felt God's call, I don't care who was running. Right. I would have went on in there. Right.
Okay. There's always landlords to get rid of. There's a lot of people to choose from.
Yeah. And then Tony Jackson is term limited now too as well. So anyway, yeah. All right, we'll stop pressing you there. I promise. We thank you, Pastor, for letting us do that. Right. So there's something a little more lighthearted. I got a real issue with people calling the South Side the Southeast. Yeah. We want Promise League to tell us what this place is called here and now, and that's it.
So I just had that conversation this morning.
Okay.
One with the lady sitting right there.
Oh, okay. That's good. Ironic that we bring it up.
Yeah, and the little people guy that's sitting too. Wow. So it's interesting. And I had this conversation with Richard this morning. Mm. So Richard, when we were talking, he kept referring to Hillside as Hillside, which is correct.
Yeah.
And what has happened is people have taken all these neighborhoods and called them Southeast, which is a distraction.
Yeah.
So the developers called it Southeast, the police department called it Southeast, the city council, the county commission called it Southeast. And so when they drop a few pennies in Southeast, and Hillside asked for some money, whether it's community block grant funds, CDBG funds, or whatever funds, they say, oh, we've already given money in the Southeast. But you haven't given money in Hillside.
Right.
That is obligated and earmarked for Hillside, and you haven't given money in Adams or K-Land.
Right.
So years ago, when I first started organizing, we organized Hillside, it was called Adams. It wasn't K-Land, it was called Adams. Mm-hmm. Then we did Shelton, we did Pikes Peak Park Neighbors, we did Deerfield Hills, and we went all the way to Powers wasn't even there then.
Okay.
So we had 8 or 9, 10 neighborhoods there that were organized, had their own 501c3, their own bylaws, their own neighborhood association.
Wow.
Then they started getting CDBG funds from the city because it's a legal thing for the city to do. But to continue to just refer to us as Southeast, when people name a thing or categorize a thing, then they can better control the thing. So for them to say Southeast, that's a polarization that then projects a negative image that everything over here is poor,
right,
that everything over here is worthless, that we're needy, that we got our hands out, and that is not the case. So we need to start calling these neighborhoods by their rightful name. These neighborhoods have boundaries.
Yeah.
Adams is Circle, Fountain, Airport to Union.
Yeah.
Hillside is Union, Pikes Peak, Wasatch to Las Vegas. These are our neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way we can stop the encroachment. That's the only way we can prevent the gentrification. That's the only way we can prevent taxation without representation, is to call the neighborhoods as they are.
Well, that's what all the other neighborhood organizations do, right?
Absolutely.
Or what is it? The
Kono, or the Northside Neighbors, or Lower Shooks Run, and
Mid Shooks Run,
yeah,
North Shooks Run, and all that. Yeah. Nobody talks about it as, oh, that's the, I don't even know what to call it.
Yeah,
just north and east of downtown.
Yeah. So I agree, and I feel like, I don't know. I think your explanation of it is more accurate than mine. It feels like they just don't want us to call it what we call it. You know, I don't know what that really sounds like or what that turns into, but we never called it this. And if, I don't know where this Southeast thing came from, and it makes sense that you just group them into this thing. Now you don't have to talk about Deerfield or Pikes Peak Park or, you know, Eastboro or whatever. You can just say we dropped some money in the bucket in that big huge bucket, you know. So
you remember the Gazette came out some years ago with that article, that series about 10-week series, I think, about Southeast crime in the Southeast, and that stuck. But it was already pre-conversations, you know, before that came out.
Right.
So that categorized it. So when people in the rest of the city read that, they say, "Oh, Southeast," and so the media, we have to keep the media accountable. Years ago at Hillside, I don't want to take up all the time. Years ago in Hillside, a reporter came out and in front of the Hillside Neighborhood Association, which was at 301 South Hancock, and said, "Oh, as I look out the window here, I see prostitution, I see this, I see that, blah, blah, blah." And the article came out. And I marched that article right back down to the Gazette office, talked to the editor. I had him come out to that same spot that reporter reported at. And none of that was happening. We had cleaned up the neighborhood. And so the media has a way of polarizing neighborhoods and people, obviously.
Exactly.
So we want them, when they come in, we always ask the question and say, are you a writer or an interpreter? If you're going to write the story, write it as it is. Don't interpret it in a different way. And so we have to hold the media accountable.
Right. Okay, and you know, it's funny that you say this, that the Gazette was the reason that this happened, because the Gazette editor was just at the Capitol building with his family running into it, January 6th. He was a member of that mob, and that is how he looks at us, you know, and it really upsets me. A lot of folks, even conservatives, either conservative or not, got issues with the Gazette. You know what I'm saying? And I think that we need to address that as a community, man. And that's a great thing. I didn't even think about. Come bring your ass. Let me show you where this.
Get the real story, and talk to the right people.
Right.
Talk to the right people. You don't write an article about this neighborhood if you haven't talked to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm surprised that you're talking about the Gazette. I'm surprised they printed the recent article.
Right. Me too.
I was baffled.
Me too. I couldn't believe that, you know, so we could talk about
that 13-year-old picture that they put in there.
I was wondering where that came from. When I said on my phone, I said, what's going on there?
I think I was 12 years old.
So, we could talk about CMAC.
Well, I mean, the article, if people missed it, you wrote an op-ed in the Gazette about how Southeast, about how the school districts, District 2 and District 11, District 11 is not just Southeast, are really failing the kids. If you want to talk a little bit more about that, that would be great.
Yeah. The test scores say that. It's real. The numbers are real there, and so the average. I don't have the specific numbers off the top of my head, but 22% of Black and brown kids in District 11. This is just an estimate, and you go to read the article. 22-25% of Black and brown kids in District 11 and District 2 from grades 3 to 6 are proficient in math and English. So that leaves us with, do the math.
Almost
80% are failing. Here's the worst, here's some more news that's even worse, is that the longer they stay in the system, the worse those numbers become. So we rallied, we protested about Devon Bailey and other Black and brown people that would get gunned down.
Right.
But for decades on this ship, and I call it the killing fields, for decades our kids have been dumbed down. And for me, that's the greatest atrocity. Malcolm X said, when you got poor neighborhoods, you got poor schools. When you got poor schools, you got poor teachers. When you got poor teachers, you got poor education. When you got people who are being educated poorly, they get poor jobs. And that's what we have. And so that's what we should really be addressing. And I like what you guys are doing, the what do you call the school?
Freedom School.
The Freedom School. Don't get me started.
So what are sort of your thoughts on that? Like what some of the reasons you think this is happening, and then some of your ideas about like, well, how do we move out of this? Because we've been talking about this for like, I don't know, ever since we met with you a couple
Since you
weeks
told
ago.
us the numbers,
Actually,
it's
it's just been like, well, how do you address this? Because there's so many variables that come into these.
There are a lot of variables. Somebody responded to the article and said, well, don't you know that a lot of this occurs in our own backyard? Absolutely right. When people have to work, and this is not an excuse, this is just reality.
Yeah.
When you got two parents or you got one parent, they have to work all day,
Right.
and maybe they don't understand this new math or this, that, and other. It's difficult. We pay taxes, and it's important that our tax dollars are rightfully represented.
Mm-hmm.
And so schools should be educating our children. Not everybody can educate a child from a different culture. That's just a reality.
Yeah.
I went to Helen Hunt, I went to John Adams. I never forget taking the test. And there was a thing, it was a picture there, and they said, what is this? And I said, it's a little plate. I wrote it, I was in third or fourth grade, I said, a little plate. And so a lot of it was like an IQ test for elementary school. And a lot of those questions were like that, and I flunked it. And I kept thinking, what the heck just happened here? Well, it wasn't,
It's a saucer.
it's a saucer. In my household, we never use that verbiage, saucer.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
what is this? It's a spoon, but it was a teaspoon.
Oh, right.
Mm,
When I want some cereal back then, I just go grab a spoon. I'm not trying to define it, you know.
Right, right.
So part of it, we do have a responsibility in trying to educate our children at home. But the other issue is that either this atrocity is done out of ignorance or intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have poor, you can't have rich. And sometimes people who are in this category of rich are threatened to see poor rise because they perceive that as that our rise becomes their fall. So sometimes there's an intentional perpetuation
Right.
to keep people down, to do the dumbing down. Now, how we change it is partly what you're doing. This system, this educational system, and it's like this across the country. It's just not here in Colorado Springs. It's a big old ship. And the problem is systemic, and the change has to be systemic. And we can't turn that ship into the right direction, let alone around in our lifetime or your kids' lifetime. Two options, either from what I said, the ship either needs to be destroyed,
Mm-hmm.
blow it out of the water,
Right.
and or you create and build some other boats or ships around that and point them in the right direction. That could be a charter school. That could be what you're doing now. That could be a tutoring program. And the districts get money for students. The money should follow the student. What you guys are doing, if you're educating students in here, that money that the district gets for them should come here to pay for them to be properly educated.
Isn't that the system Colorado Springs has, though? Don't we? I mean, you have school choice in Colorado Springs, right?
Mhm.
So, do you see that as like really accomplishing that goal, or do you see like is there some problems in that?
That's one way, but us in our community, if we love this community, if we love this neighborhood, set up our own school.
Right.
You got the space here,
Yeah.
you got the expertise here. What you need is the money.
Right. And, you know, and also the being able to take your kids to whatever school in the city that you want, it just isn't an option for a lot of folks down here or all over the city. You know, like we know that District 20 is probably one of the best districts in the
drive all the way
right. You
across.
can't
For education,
for education, yeah,
but not culturation.
Right,
Oh,
that's
for
my
sure.
understanding.
Yeah, that is true.
So,
Like,
so
that
that's
is
the
true.
problem you run into. With that.
So, do you support the idea of a unified school district in the city?
It depends on how that's defined.
Okay. What are the different definitions?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I mean,
instead of
I don't
having
know.
District 2, District 11, District 20,
It's a
District 12,
unified
just like
school
the
district for the
Colorado
city.
Springs
Absolutely not.
Unified School District.
No.
That's like saying a unified religious community. There's no autonomy. There's no room to to veer off and do something that may help over here that doesn't help over here.
Okay.
To me, that becomes an institution that I think that makes it worse. But it depends on the definition of what that really means.
Yeah, in my head, I'm thinking that it means the money is evenly distributed to all of the schools in the city, in the whole city, so that way, you know, our underfunded districts are able to get the same amount of funding that the overfunded schools are getting.
Because like Malcolm X said, you know, you get poor neighborhoods, you get poor schools. Because I mean, we know District 2 has the lowest property values, so then they get the lowest
everything
amount per school or whatever.
What teachers want to work in? What percentage of teachers want to work in poor neighborhoods?
Yeah, no.
Most of them are scared.
Yeah.
Right.
Most of them are unacquainted with the culture.
Yeah, or they're like what's it called? AmeriCorps, who go in for 2 years.
Yeah.
Get trained and then go off into
John Adams and Helen Hunt for years were used as a training ground for teachers and for principals. So principals would come through there and they would do their little term, and then they'd move on to a different school. And there was so much turnover, so much turnover. So I've seen it go on for years.
Yeah, I mean, what's the average teacher length in a unfunded schools or something? I think it is 2 years, something like that. It's really, really low. You know, teachers come through and they're like, I can do this. I want to do this. I'm going to go in and help the underprivileged. And then and I'm sure there's a million different reasons why, you know, for every single person, you know, school culture. And I'm also sure they're like, this is a lot of work for not very much pay. You know, how many people want to continue to do that in their lives? So, and then they move on to like, you know, a place where they don't have to work as hard and can get more money.
Yeah.
You know?
So do you see the answer in District 11 and District 2? Do you see that answer being community led only? Like that is that the only way that you see this happening?
No.
Because in my eyes, I don't see them being able to fix what they create. Like, or just like, you know, America isn't broke right now. Like America's operating exactly how it's supposed to be going, right? And so the schools are doing. They're not. If they were I guess if they were like Mitchell High School was on the track to get shut down, right? So I guess if they were failing, we would know that you are literally failing. But if you're operating within the parameters, which District 2 and District 11 obviously have to be doing something right, you know what I mean? They're not being you know, being shut down or whatnot. Like how do we do this thing? You know what I mean?
So,
I don't know.
So Mitchell has been on the shutdown list for almost a decade. John Adams was on the chopping list for over 10 years. Helen Hunt was on the chopping list for like 20 years. It just takes a while for them to finally get there and pull the plug on. So these schools are already on the chopping list, and people know this. People got upset with me about not protesting keeping Helen Hunt open.
Oh, right. I was just going to ask.
But I kept saying the children aren't getting educated. Either give the school to the community, let us staff it. You give us the money, let us staff it. Let us hire the teachers, let us hire the social workers. Let us do this. Because the people you got coming in are staying a year and leaving, and they're not educating the children. So I said, yeah, it should be shut down.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Ooh, sounds like the same thing's going on in Mitchell too, man. They might get it together.
But the whole district, the numbers I just gave you, that is reflective of the whole district.
Right. You said the longer they are, the worse it gets.
The worse.
That's nuts to me. So how do we fix it? What do we do?
You start your own school.
Do it.
Even if you're just supplementing.
Yeah.
Even if you're adding good vegetables to the slop that's being fed.
Just do
Pardon
it.
my
I agree.
Because you guys are adding good vegetables
Yeah.
to the slop that's being fed.
Yeah.
And you care.
Right.
And
it's
you're
making
committed.
me mad right now just thinking about
Don't
it.
get mad.
I mean, we were just talking about this too. Actually, like so much of that education often comes from outside of the schools anyway. You know what I'm saying? The schools are essentially just, I mean, the schools aren't not educating. I can't say that. I come from a long line of educators.
Sure.
So my family will yell at me. But, you know, like so much of what's happening in the school is like coming from really outside the school as well, right? So like supplementing is really like an important part of it.
It's necessary.
If both your parents are working 2 jobs, like they don't have the time to sit down and tutor you or whatever.
There are examples across the nation. There's one school called Piney. I believe it's in maybe Mississippi. You can look it up. But there are a number of schools across the nation that are doing things on a broader scale, but similar to what you guys are doing.
Mm.
And these students are coming out, I mean, at the top, but that supplementation that we're talking about is ingrained in the school.
Right.
So I think it was Malcolm also that said, if a people won't treat you right, what makes you think they'll teach you right? I'm an educator too. I taught at PPC for some years and done professorship in different places. I used to see those students coming from out of high school, and I kept thinking, how did you even make it into this community college?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, when I got into community college, I mean, of course I dropped out of high school. I'm not gonna defend schools, like, I couldn't deal with schooling. Like, there is a problem with our schooling. It has a very limited view of what education and discipline and things like this look like. But I learned how to read and write and all that in college once I actually got to college. And I went through District 11 for most of my life, in high school and Pueblo, I guess, but that's,
Damn, I didn't even think about that. Me too, man. I suck at school the time.
I really did. Like, I did not know, and you can ask Sam. Sam's even on the live feed right now. Like, I really did not know how to write until I got out of high school. I mean, you learn the little basics or whatever, but I couldn't even write.
I mean, the public schools, most of them, as far as I know, don't teach cursive handwriting anymore.
Nah, yeah.
Some of the charter schools do. I had a guy, he's in the 11th grade in my office the other day, doing some community service. And I said, here, just fill out these envelopes. He didn't know how to write the address. He didn't know where to write the address. And he didn't know where to write the return address.
Oh, on the envelope.
On an envelope. Now I know that's old school.
Right.
School.
Yeah,
but yes.
Yeah. You gotta know how to send a letter.
Yeah. I mean, we see these folks working in McDonald's or Sonic or stuff like this. If the cash register breaks, they're in trouble. Your order's 80 cents, sir, and the cash register breaks. Oh, how much change is that?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Next time you go through drive-thru, think about it.
I mean, I've been there. I'm not good at doing math on the spot, so I'm not going to give them too much.
Yeah, I suck at it. But I understand what you're saying, and so again, we're talking about Sam, and Sam, she does this for me all the time. I promise. So when I got something in my head, and I'm like, how you use the ship analogy, you line the ships up alongside of it instead of blowing it up. The way that she put it is to build horizontal networks of support. See how Sam does that for me. Yeah, so and she was talking about what you're saying with the community, using the community to teach the kids, to supplement the education that's going on, and those horizontal networks of support are needed. You know what I mean? So I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. We jumped. That was supposed to be our last topic,
sorry.
But what we were on our way to was talking about the uprising of the summer after the Devon Bailey killing, and I wanted to ask you, in your estimation, how effective was our uprising, and how do we measure our effectiveness from here out?
Yeah, so there's, as you know, quantitative measurements and qualitative measurements, and I think that if we just look at it from a street level, we can see that we had some effect, some positive effect. More people registered to vote since then because they were tired of the powers that be. We got the bill passed from your good friend, Leslie Herod. Tony Exum was a great help. People became encouraged and excited about running for office, even considering running for office. I think what we did was bridged some gaps, and there was a lot of, when we saw the protest, and it was intergenerational, it was interdenominational, it was intercultural. So you had whites walking next to blacks, you had Jews, you had Africans, you had Germans, so it brought the city together. I think it also raised the consciousness of some of the wealthier people, business people in our community. I think it was really an illumination of where people stand and what people think and and how committed or non-committed they are.
Mm.
Some people hid in their houses
Right.
or closets,
Right.
but some people came out and protested, even though it wasn't their son, even though the person didn't look like them, wasn't the same color of them. But I think there's a bigger measurement that we are waiting on, and that's to see what happens going forward. Business people, going back to that broken system, the killing fields, business people continue to fund school districts with mill levies and everything else. They continue to pour money into this broken machine. And that's why I say, why? Is it out of ignorance or is it intentional? Do you want to keep a level of society dumb so they can continue to do the domestic work, blah, 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 and so you can continue to stay here? And so what people should be doing, and I'm not here trying to blow your trumpet here, but I believe in what you're doing. What people should be doing is saying, how can I seed or fund these programs you're doing? Because the reality, if we're imparting morals and principles and values and education and information and commitment into our children, they're less likely to go out there and be a hazard, if you would.
Right.
But we have to be empowered to do that. We can't wait and just depend on the system. We can't have this dependency, this do 2 or do 4. We can't, rely on that. So I think that we made some strides. Did we make as many as we wanted to? No. But I think across the nation, even with our current administration, I think if people wouldn't have protested, we wouldn't have a different president than we do now. And that was global. I think that not as many people would have got out of prison as did. So I think we made some strides. But let me say this to our listeners, that if something like that which happens again, it will be terrible on Colorado Springs.
Oh man.
Colorado Springs, you only saw the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg. Now, this thing could have been handled a lot differently. Had we been at least extended a palm leaf to say, let's have a conversation about this from Mayor Suthers, then it could have been opportunity for dialogue.
Right.
But he refused to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And the police chief, I think that this city is too big for him.
Yeah.
That's the
That's a
best way I've
consensus.
ever heard. That's the best way I've ever heard that.
Now somebody said
That's
the
a
other,
nice way to put it.
well, somebody said the other day, maybe RFD or someplace like that.
Yeah.
But this city's too big for him. I mean, how do you have all those leaders in the room after the killing of that young man, and you won't agree to talk to the family?
I was completely
it's
blown
nuts.
away by both Suthers and Niski's handling of both the Devon Bailey murder and the
Josh.
uprising.
Yeah.
And I wasn't here for Josh Beal, but
Oh.
and then the uprisings too. I mean, they were just so clueless, it seemed like. And you're right, they were never willing to. It wasn't until after that weekend of protests, the parade and the vandalism, that Suthers was even willing to acknowledge things in public.
Yeah.
With regards to Devon Bailey. And then, after, I don't want to call them riots here because it's not, they weren't that rowdy, but some windows got broken at the police station and the courthouse. That's what it took them for them to even somewhat acknowledge that there was some issue here. But it doesn't even seem like they're really acknowledging that there is racism in Colorado Springs, that the police department has any degree of bias, or that there is systemic bias built into the way that the city operates. It's just maddening. I sometimes am at a loss with Suthers and Niski. Like, what does it take for you guys? And that's why I appreciate, I remember this stuck with me at City Hall when you spoke at City Hall after Devon Bailey was murdered. Like, Ferguson is like, we're going to have a Ferguson in Colorado Springs, because you can't just
continue to ignore things that are right in your face without, people getting upset.
Right,
to,
yeah.
to put it like
It was, I always go back when we talk about whether, we asked all of the people that came on, do you believe that the mayor and that Niski believes us? And, obviously, they were like, well, I don't need this placation and stuff. And that's obvious that they don't. So, we also talked about the LETAC, and I wanted to get your input on the LETAC. And, the community, we asked for an oversight board or committee that, that could do something about the things that they had. Yeah, that has teeth. That's what we were all saying. They could do something about the things that they found, and instead we got LETAC. So for me, it signals, no, we're not listening to you. We're gonna do this here so that we can try to not have an uprising. To further this uprising or whatnot. I think I know what you believe about the LETAC thing, but how do we fix it? How do we get to a point where we are where we do get this oversight committee, or we are having a conversation that LETAC isn't what the community asked, or do we at all? I mean,
unfortunately, there's a proverb that says that he who conceals a disease cannot expect to be healed. And if there's not acknowledgement that there's an issue, there can be no change.
Okay.
And unfortunately, and as much as I dread to say this, I think that based on what they did by putting that group in place, the toothless group in place, we're going to end up with another situation.
Yeah. And
that group should take full responsibility for it, along with the people that put them in place. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
we should be held accountable.
But I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I really hope the CSPD, I mean, oh man, don't kill nobody down here, man.
Yeah.
Don't kill nobody down here. So, all right, yeah. I don't know what it is about Pastor Lee. You got the ability to make me I'm ready to go right now. Like, man, y'all made me mad just thinking about this stuff. But I'm so angry and upset with knowing that we are actively being ignored, and that they're using this thing as this shining new thing that they got. That's a good thing, and they are with that every time that they say LETAC is telling me we're ignoring you, we're ignoring you, we're ignoring you, and until the inevitable happens. You know what I mean? Until the inevitable happens. So
the work that all of us put in, and the amount of time and money and energy that was spent going to Austin, Texas.
Right.
People single moms, that went for 2 or 3 days, that couldn't afford it, that left their babies at home because they believed in trying to bring about change.
Yeah.
By sitting at the table, having some healthy dialogue, and all that work that we put in, Justice for Devon Bailey, editorial board, and it was just discounted.
Just ignore
it. But it still exists.
Right.
And so sometimes what has to happen is an incident occurs, and then who you going to call? Don't call me.
Yeah, I know that's right.
I said at the last council meeting, this is the last opportunity you have for me to be a moderate voice.
Mm-hmm. I know that's right.
Yeah.
They got the nice Sean that last time. They got the nice one that time. So all right, man. Hey, I think we covered everything. Pastor Lee, what you think, John? You got any more questions?
I mean, we could probably come.
We can talk forever.
All day,
It looks like we're coming right up on another hour, man.
Exactly.
We're doing it. We've been doing good. So anyway, Pastor, I really appreciate you. We started out the show with just thanking you for being just steady and consistently dedicated to us over 40 years, and we appreciate it. And I hope that you told us already that you're proud of us, but I hope that we continue to make you proud and continue to keep pushing the line. Man. So thank you.
One last closing comment here. So I just really want to say this to us and maybe for others listening. If we all have the same mission or similar mission or goals in mind, let's realize that we're going to take different paths to get there. And so beyond just being in friend relationship or associate or colleague relationship. We have to establish covenant relationship.
Mm.
And what that means, that's different. That's a higher level. That means that if I'm in covenant with you, no matter what you do, I'm still here for you. No matter what I do, you're still here for me.
Yeah.
We go behind the barn and we figure out our stuff, but out here you understand?
Right.
So I think that's the hope of community organizing. I think that's the hope of the movement, is that we find people like-minded and we develop a covenant relationship. You may do something I don't agree with, you may do it a different way, I may do the same thing, but we're not gonna fall out about that. We're gonna disagree,
Right.
but we're not gonna fall out. I'm not gonna let nobody hurt you,
Yeah.
no matter what you've done,
Right. Right.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we need
covenant
that.
relationship.
Always dropping science
Yeah,
for me
yeah,
here.
that's-
What was the
yeah.
last thing you taught me? I was like, yes. I was like going for months with that
No, you
last
said
thing.
Pentecost.
Yeah, the
But you're right,
Pentecost, the
Pentecost.
covenant. These are all great concepts that we need to bring out into the organizing
Pentecost,
world
all
with
of us coming and having, being of the same mind,
Oh, okay.
so that then something can happen.
Right.
Okay.
So we can
Yeah.
be in the covenant.
So
Right.
we can be in the covenant.
All right,
Indeed.
perfect.
Indeed.
I need you to preach this Sunday.
Ah, man.
My
All
mom
right.
will be so happy.
Hey, y'all appreciate